Out of all the 7 fiction books I've read this year, and it's just February, Divinerivals tops it. Hi everyone, welcome back to Faithfully Booked. Here on Faithfully Booked, my name is Tomisin, and welcome. So today we're talking about another book, because that's what we do on Faithfully Booked. We talk about books, review books from a Christian worldview, determining whether or not we should spend our valuable to invest our valuable time with these books. We draw out lessons from the book and everything along those lines. You're in for a ride, because today we're talking about none other than the Letters of Enchantment series. The Letters of Enchantment series is a duology by Rebecca Ross. He has Ruthless Vows and Divinerivals. Actually has Divinerivals and Ruthless Vows. Ruthless Vows is after Divinerivals, so Divinerivals is the first and Ruthless Vows is the second, and I'm really excited to talk about it because this was the best fiction series I've read this year. I've read only one series, to be fair, and still, but out of all the 7 fiction books I've read this year, and it's just February, Divinerivals tops it. Divinerivals is the best fiction book I've read so far this year, 2025. I had an amazing time reading it. I actually had the book since 2024, but I didn't get into it until this month. Divinerivals follows the story of Iris and Roman. Iris and Roman are 2 writers. They work at the same place, the Oath Gazette, and they have this whole, rivalry thing going on. Iris is an 18-year-old writer. She works at the Oath Gazette. The Oath Gazette is a newspaper, so she writes for the Oath Gazette. She specializes in writing obituaries, that sort of thing. She lives with her mom and her brother Forrest. But what happens is that during this whole time, there's a war going on between gods, right? So we have gods in this book. This book has a whole lot of things, right? So the war is between 2 gods, Dakre and Enver. So Dakre and Enver are 2 gods that are fighting. They used to be like lovers, that they are enlisting human beings, right? Human beings to fight on their side. So some people are on Enver's side, while some people are on Dakre's side, right? But Dakre is like the bad guy, while Enver is the good guy. It's male, Enver is female. They used to be like married, but now they are fighting, and they need people to fight in the war for them, because that first enlisted in one is fighting on Enver's side. He leaves his family, leaves his mom and his sister. Forrest has left for the war. Their mom asked her to drinking, and because she's just so like sad and distraught over the fact that her son has left for the war, so she turns to drinking. She can't even do her work well, and she just goes on a downward spiral, and because of that, Iris has to take up the workload. She has to start working just to make ends meet and to take care of herself and take care of her mother. So that's why she's working at the Oath Gazette. She used to go to a school, but she dropped out of the school. She's a writer for the Oath Gazette. She writes really beautifully, right? And it's at the Oath Gazette that she meets Roman. Roman Kit is a 19-year-old writer as well, so he's also really good. Both of them are really amazing writers and everything. But whereas where Iris specializes, not like she specializes, but Iris has been assigned to writing obituaries, Roman gets like the more interesting stuff, that sort of thing. But now both of them are they are vying for the same position, right? So that they are loggerheads, that sort of thing. Both of them are vying for the same position, which is the head columnist of the newspaper they work in, which is the Oath Gazette. So they have this whole rivalry, enemies sort of, situation going on, where, they don't exactly like each other. Iris will just go out of her way to, mess with kids, such as, let's say, turning his books upside down because he likes his things arranged. So she just go out of her way to just do little things like that just get to him. So that's the whole situation that they have going on. Back at home, just so that she can cope, Iris she keeps on reaching out to her brother Forrest. She has a typewriter at home that was handed down to her by her grandmother. That's what she uses to write and everything. So she keeps on sending letters to her brother Forrest, but Forrest never replies, until one day she gets a response, but the response is, this is not Forrest. So somebody has been getting her letters but never replying, because until one day that person actually replied, only to let her know that I'm not actually Forrest. So that whole thing where the person is getting her letters, she doesn't know who the person is, but the person knows who she is, right? It turns out that the person that's been getting her letters is none other than Roman Kit, our enemy or our rival from work. Knows that it's Iris that's been sending these letters, but Iris does not know that it's Roman who has been receiving her letters. So Iris and this unknown person, they just continue having this back and forth. They keep on sending letters to each other, building a really solid relationship, a really solid friendship where they can divulge things to one another, share their thoughts with one another, and there's just a really beautiful relationship going on. And the only reason that they can actually send letters to one another with their typewriter, because Iris is typing from her room, she's typing from her house, and is getting to man's house, right? So how is that happening? So both of them have this magical typewriter. It's called the Alouette, right? They have that if Iris is typing, it would get to Roman's place, right? So the only criteria is that both of them have this typewriter, because the typewriters were made, there's the whole history of the typewriter. And Roman also has a typewriter because his own grandmother also handed down the typewriter to him. And it turns out that Roman and Iris's grandmother, both of them were friends with a third person, so there's a third Alouette. That's the whole situation that we have on ground. So whilst at work, Roman and Iris, they still have their whole enemies thing going on, but there are just some situations that just allow them to just draw nearer to each other. Some things just happen that keeps them coming back to each other. They have to be in close proximity with each other. Eventually, Iris decides to leave the Oath Gazette. So some things happen in Iris's life, and she leaves the newspaper where she works in, and she actually becomes a war correspondent for the competitor. So the newspaper she was working at was the Oath Gazette, but she eventually leaves the Oath Gazette and she joins the Inks Reading Tribune, and she becomes a war correspondent. So that just means that she goes to the war front, she goes to where the war is actually happening, she observes what's happening, she interacts with soldiers, and she reports on the war, right? But obviously, because she's reporting on the war, some people are not happy with them reporting. Maybe they are scared of the god Dakre and all of that stuff. So some people are not actually happy that they are reporting the war. But whilst she's reporting the war, she's not actually doing it alone. She encounters a girl, Ati, and she lives in the B&B. She stays in Marisol's B&B. So Ati and Iris are reporting the war together. They live together. They're reporting the war together. So whilst they're at Marisol's B&B, now Marisol's B&B is not in the same city where Iris used to live in, right? So it's in a different city or in a different town, but it's the same country or the same nation, that sort of thing, right? So whilst they are there are some rules that they have to adhere to. There are some things that they actually have to follow, because what has been happening is that Dakre has these creatures, right? These hounds, these massive creatures called Ethrals, right? And these creatures, they can destroy human beings or kill human beings, right? So they have to turn off the electricity, and they just have to resort to using candles so that when the creatures come around, they will not be able to see them and attack them. So there are just some rules that govern how they actually live where they are. And eventually a third correspondent actually joins Ati and Iris, right? And it's none other than Roman Kate. And when Roman joins them, Iris is like, hey, this guy, I left him behind in Oath, only for him to leave Oath and come here just so that it can be better than me at, this whole war correspondent work that I'm doing. And she's just like, why is this guy here? Obviously, he did not come to, the whole place. He did not leave Oath. He did not defy his father, leave his family behind just so he could do better than Iris, but because he actually liked Iris and he just wanted to be with her. But still, Iris and the person that she has been exchanging letters with, they still continue exchanging letters with. All the while, Iris does not actually know that it is Roman. Even when Roman comes to the place where she's the war correspondent, she still doesn't know that it is Roman that is the person she has been sending letters to. But eventually that does come out. She eventually finds out that it's Roman that she has been sending letters to and all of that, and she doesn't take so kindly to it. But Iris, Roman, they have these opportunities to go to the war front line, experience the war firsthand. They go to the front line of the war, they meet with wounded soldiers, and they can just report the war accurately, right? They can actually give the citizens of Oath and everybody, they can actually give them real information about what is actually going on with the war, so that people are not actually misinformed. And that's the power of media, right? All of this is happening. Iris and Roman are getting closer. Iris finds out that Roman is the person she has been sending letters to, but they still get closer and closer and closer. They eventually become lovers, like real tight lovers and all of that. But Dakre invades their town, so he attacks their town, and everybody has to rush out, everybody has to evacuate, everybody has to leave the town. And if I remember the name of the town, well, I'll just check for the name of the town and I'll just include it, right? So everybody has to leave the town, because if they don't leave the town, everybody's going to die, and they don't even have enough defenses to defend themselves from Dakre's attack. The process of leaving the town, somebody makes a reappearance, and it's none other than Iris's brother Forrest. But when he comes, Iris doesn't even know that, oh, it's my brother Forrest, right? Because it was wearing a mask and they were in the heat of war. It was not a very, very good situation that was happening. There was smoke, a whole lot of things were happening. There was urgent evacuation taking place. So she didn't even know that it was Forrest. She thought it was Roman. So she was following him, only to eventually find out that it was not Roman. So that was how Roman and Iris got separated during that whole evacuation process, leaving Roman on the verge of death. So Iris got reunited with her brother, but she was separated from her lover. Roman was going to die, right? So that's how Dacre came to his rescue. He saved his life and all of that. And that's basically how Divinerivals ends. Divinerivals ends on a cliffhanger. It was epic, it was peak and all of that. And we move to Ruthless Vows. So in Ruthless Vows, and I won't go too in depth about Ruthless Vows, but in Ruthless Vows we see that Roman doesn't remember, like he doesn't have his memories, so he's on Dacre's side, he's writing for Dacre, whereas Iris is writing for the war, sort of. She's not exactly writing for Ember, but she's writing for the war, just writing everything that is happening, giving the right details, the accurate details and everything. We see Roman writing for Dacre, and that's because he has lost his memories. He doesn't know anything, doesn't know the writing, doesn't even know that him and Iris used to be like really, really, really close knit and together. All those things, all his memories are gone, right? But eventually with time he would have the opportunity to regain his memories, that sort of thing. So he's in a really precarious situation. He's working for the enemy, working for the person that is killing thousands and thousands of people, bombing their cities, that sort of thing. And it also turns out that his father was also working for the enemy, right? So we just see a whole lot of war in Ruthless Vows. We see how Roman and Iris can still continue corresponding even in the heat of everything that is going on behind Dacre's back. We see Ruthless Vows. We see, the whole explanation behind the Ruthless Vows. We see the history of Ember and Dacre. We see how and why Ember can't even be the one to destroy Ember. We see gods going missing, right? Because the gods were buried, so the gods are supposed to stay buried. The gods were buried and all of that, but we see that some gods are now missing, right? And there's a whole lot of mystery, like, oh, why are the gods buried, that sort of thing. We see Dacre just trying to advance his purposes, him just trying to take over the city, and just all those things happening in Ruthless Vows. So Ruthless Vows was really, really, really good. That's basically the Letters of Enchantment series. And I know I focus more on Divinerivals. Because I did not want to give away too many spoilers. So this series I really, really, really enjoyed reading, and everybody should definitely read this series. It was really, really, really good. So if you're looking for fantasy, you're looking for that enemies to lovers tropes, you're looking for a story that has gods, has the war, has magical typewriters, has friendships and explores friendships and relationships, that sort of thing, right? You should definitely pick up Divinerivals, and Divinerivals will lead you to Ruthless Vows, right? So this was a book that I really, 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 really enjoyed, right? The descriptions were top notch. I love the descriptions. The book was beautifully written. I love the descriptions, love the character formation. I love the characters. I loved Iris and I loved Roman. I love their dynamic, right? I love their transition from enemies to lovers. They started off as enemies. Everything was just done so well. Everything was done so well. I really, 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 really liked the book, right? And some mornings, right, there was a little bit of spice, there was some spice, but nothing overwhelming that that I could not read it, and let's say someone would not be able to read it, right? So let's say a 15-year-old, right, let's say a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old, in fact, if you're 13, let's say you're 13, right, you just skip some parts, right, skip the spicy scenes and all of that, right? There wasn't like language or bad languages or anything like that, but there was also a mention of a same-sex couple. So there was a same-sex couple, right, a woman and woman couple, right, which is the LGBTQ community plus community thing, which is not necessarily whatever. I'm not talking too much about that, but it's not biblical. All right, so those are just some warnings and some themes that were explored, right? The war, right? I really, 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 really loved how the war was explored. I really loved how I loved everything about this book. I love that, it just showed us what the war actually does. It shows us like sort of firsthand the things that people actually have to go through, the effect that the war actually has on people, has on families, has on lives, right? That, when people actually go through war, they do not come out the same way. Like lives are actually lost, properties are actually lost, things are actually altered, right? So this was something that we had the opportunity to see in this book, right? And even as Ruthless Vows was coming to an end, right, the person that was telling the epilogue of Ruthless Vows said that she made a statement that if you knew where to look, you'd see that the war had actually left scars on the city, right? And that's what war actually does, right? And even till today, there are cities that are still recovering from the effect of war. Let's take into consideration, the whole Nagasaki and Hiroshima thing. Let's take into consideration years after, the effects of the World War II are still ringing, the effects of the Biafran War, that's all those things, they are still ringing. And let's even say that, okay, the effects are not physical, right? The mental scars that have been left on people, the emotional scars, the distrust, all those things are actually there. So the war, we wonder, is the war not actually doing more harm than good, right? It leaves effects, right? People cannot actually remain the same after the war, right? And I loved how the book actually explored this. Also explored family issues, daddy issues. That's another thing that it really explored. He explored human connections and relationships and friendships. I really loved it. Explored, like I already mentioned, I made a slight mention of it, the power of the media, right? The power of the media and the power, is it necessarily the media or the power of the press, right? The power of the press, the power of the media, and the role that the press actually has. The role that the press actually has to play in informing the people of a nation. They need to do their job well and everything. And lastly, he also explored grief. Grief was one subject that he really explored. We saw a whole lot of grief with Roman having lost someone, Iris also losing someone, right? So we saw a whole lot of grief explored over these pages. I rated Divinerivals 5-star on my Fable account, right? Because it was really so good and I was blown away. And right about now, I just want to read a few lines from the book to just convince you guys that it was really that good. The lines I'm reading, they're actually from Divinerivals. I'm not reading any lines from Ruthless Vows. Okay, so now let me start. This is Iris speaking. Our thoughts began to strike across the page. I think we all wear armor. I think those who don't are fools, risking the pain of being wounded by the sharp edges of the world over and over again. But if I've learned anything from those fools, it's that to be vulnerable is a strength most of us fear. It takes courage to let down your armor, to welcome people to see you as you are. Sometimes I feel the same as you. I can't risk having people behold me as I truly am. But there's also a small voice in the back of my mind, a voice that tells me you will miss so much by being so guarded. Oh my goodness, guys, this whole block of text, it hit me. It said you will miss so much by being so guarded. This was Iris typing to kids, right? That last line was just so amazing, right? And there was another line that said, being vulnerable is a strength, right? Being vulnerable is a strength most of us fear, right? And understandably so. But I'm not even going to talk too much on that. I leave it up to your interpretation, right? And we see all over the book there were so many lines like this that carried so much depth, carried so much weight, carried so much meaning. Like the book was so meaningful, right? You will miss so much by being so guarded, and that's just like, in your relationships, in your friendships. If you're always being guarded, you're like, oh, aren't people going to hurt me? Not even giving people an opportunity to prove themselves to you. You actually miss so much. You miss out on, what can actually be a beautiful friendship or a beautiful relationship, because you are being so guarded, like, no, let me wear an armor over myself so that I will not be hurt, right? You actually hold yourself and just limit yourself from what could be, right? From what could be. And now let me go to another line. This is Ati and Iris, right? Ati said this. She said, let me just read the whole text. She said, the next word she said, Iris felt in her chest, resounding like a second heartbeat, words that were destined to bind them together as friends. I don't want to wake up when I'm 74 only to realize that I have not lived. And this is the reality of people, right? Waking up at 74 or waking up at 50 or waking up at whatever age and realizing that they have not lived. And I think it's even better to realize when you're younger that, oh, you've not actually started living, right? Because once you realize that, oh, there's a problem, I have not discovered my purpose, I've not started living. If I die tomorrow, what have I actually achieved, right? And actually finding that out at 74. So this was actually just an encouragement to actually take those risks, right? This was actually an encouragement to take the leap, right? Stop living, just stop playing it safe, right? Stop playing it safe. You now wake up when you're 74 and you're like, oh my goodness, I should have done that, I should have taken that job in Haiti. Take the leap, right? Take the leap, seize opportunities, carpe diem, right? Seize the day. Whole umbrella of what if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't work out? And then you're living your life under the umbrella of what if it doesn't work out, that you don't actually, end up doing anything meaningful. And then you wake up one day and you realize that, I have not actually lived though. I've just been playing it safe. I've just been, just existing, right? And that will not be our own lot in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Dear Iris, this is Roman. Dear Iris, I don't think you realize how strong you are, because sometimes strength isn't swords and steel and fire as we are so often made to believe. Sometimes it's found in quiet, gentle places. The way you hold someone's hand as they grieve, the way you listen to others, the way you show up day after day, even when you are weary or afraid or simply uncertain. That is strength, and I see it in you. As for your bravery, I can honestly tell you, I don't know anyone of your mettle. Who else packs up everything and leaves the comfort of their home to become a war correspondent? Not many. I admire you in more ways than one. Keep writing. You will find the words you need to share. They are already within you, even in the shadows, hiding like jewels. Yours, Kava. It was probably Kava that he used to round up the message, but that was so weighty. I think that was so weighty, right? Because strength is not your ability to fight, Strength is displayed in the little things, right? Like Roman pointed to, the strength in the little things. There's quiet strength in your ability to listen to others, in your ability to just be present for another person, right? There's strength in all of these things, right? Iris's mouth was suddenly dry. She stared at the captain, at the hard edges of her face and the scars of her hands, and she hated this war. She hated that it was dragging good people early to their graves, that it was tearing people's lives and dreams apart. And this is the reality of what the war, or this is the reality of what war actually does to people. Now let's use Annie Frank or blessed memory as an example. It was in the midst of the war that her life was turned around, in the midst of the World War II, right? And there are people in Ukraine, there are people in Russia whose lives have been their lives have been transformed, their lives have been forever altered, right, because of the war. And that is what the war actually does to people. I don't know the reason, like, honestly speaking, I don't know the reason for the Ukraine and the Russia war. I don't know on what basis the war was started on, whatever, right? But this is what the war does to people. Let's use the World War II for instance, right? Because this book carried so many similarities, right? There was so many like World War II similarities. Maybe not so many, but like there were similarities between the whole war going on here and the World War II, right? And one thing that it was Adolf Hitler, right? The whole Adolf Hitler thing. Oh, I don't even have the exact words for why the war was started and why the World War II was a thing. But for whatever reason, it was like so many people died in that war. So many people lost their lives. So many people were never the same because of that war. And I don't know, war is so terrible, right? And this is the reality of war, that it actually takes people early to their graves. It changes people's lives in a negative way. It tears people's lives and their dreams apart. That's actually what the war does. And I really don't even have the words. I really don't even have the words for the war. But God, I beg. I think that's what I have, right? And so these are just a few lines from Divinerivals, and there's so many more of those beautiful lines that I just read. So just pick up this book. Why don't you pick up this book and actually explore for yourself and discover the beauty and the intricacy of this book. This book was a masterpiece in my opinion. I loved Divinerivals, and Ruthless Vows was equally as good. And I think another thing that I really appreciated was not even a part of the book, but it was part of the acknowledgements, right? So the author, Rebecca Ross, this was my first introduction to Rebecca Ross, and I definitely, by the grace of God, will be reading more Rebecca Ross because she's such an amazing author. She's such an amazing author, right? She's such an amazing writer, right? This book is proof. And in the acknowledgements, one thing that I saw her do, because I've now seen 3 of her books, she always does in acknowledgements, right? The ones I've seen is that she always acknowledges God, right? So people say, I thank my editor, I thank my wife, I thank my children, I thank my dog, I thank my readers, But one thing that she always does that, thank you, my Heavenly Father. So she always acknowledges God. She always returns the glory to God. And that's so meaningful. That's so important. That's so beautiful. I love to see it, right? And that just sends a message to me that even in line with everything that Jesus said, or even in line with the Bible, that when God, does something for us, we should just point people to him. There's a point in time in the Bible where Jesus was like, was talking to God and he was like, glorify me so I can glorify you. And when God gives us glory, we should glorify him. When God, lifts us, we should just use that as an opportunity to point men to him, to let men see him, right? Because that's why we are here, not just to know him, but to, to make God known, right? And see, imagine how many people have read Divinerivals now, or A River Enchanted, or Ruthless Vows, and these people see, Rebecca Ross constantly pointing to God, that can actually stir curiosity in them, like, oh, who is this God that you're talking about? And that's just another way to just reveal God to people, like regardless of where you get to, whether you're a graphic designer, you're a writer, you're a content creator, whatever it is, you're a teacher, there's always an opportunity. We always have an opportunity to point men to Christ, and in that Rebecca Ross did beautifully, and I definitely will be reading more books by her. So thank you guys for watching and staying this far. See you in the next video by the grace of God, and the link in the description box, please find it, and you see a form there that you can fill just to give me a little bit of feedback for a video that is coming up very, very soon. Faithfully Booked is turning 1. All right, so please fill the form so that I can just get some feedback. You can ask your questions there, and I'll be making a Q&A video just answering a bunch of your questions just in commemoration of the first year anniversary of Faithfully Booked. So please, let's do that. I'm looking forward to seeing your questions, your suggestions, and everything. You read Divinerivals, or would you be reading Divinerivals? Does it sound like something you'd want to read? Please let me know in the comment section, and I'll be reading all the comments. Bye guys.